These are the faces of 23 of the 27 who perished in the UK's deadliest migrant boat channel crossing. Among them, 7 children and 13 women. They came from Kurdistan, Egypt, Ethiopia, Afghanistan and Somalia. Some of the families have sat through the harrowing story of what happened, as a public inquiry has been examining why there was no rescue. Isa Mohammed Omar was one of only 2 survivors, but the only one to give evidence to the inquiry.
sawaxanka dadka nafbaxayaan ileen saacado badan baa u dhaxaysay inta aan subaxii ka tagay dabaasha iyo inta aan doonta haysta saacadaha u dhaxay habeenkii oo dhan doonta baa haystay haddii la heli lahaa gargaar degdeg ah markaas noo yimaado dadkaas oo dhammaysan dhinteen waxaa laga heli lahaa still half.
A week ago, the families took a boat to the last confirmed location for that dinghy. They went to remember their children, brothers, sisters, nieces and nephews. Among them was Zana Mamand Mohammed, a police officer in Kurdistan who last saw his 18-year-old brother when he left for Europe. Twana is still missing, more than 3 years on.
It's very difficult. It's very painful. It's difficult to be living in limbo, waiting. It's just me and 2 other families who have loved ones missing. We always wait for our phone to ring or to hear the sound of a text message to see if it will be them.
The inquiry learnt the boat set off from a beach between Calais and Dunkirk at around 10 o'clock that night. 3 hours later, close to the line dividing French and UK waters, the alarm was raised. There were calls to French and British coastguards, with one caller saying, "It's finished." It's in this area, at least 10 hours later, when bodies and survivors were found. Those desperate calls came into Dover Coastguard behind me. The team were grappling with what was described to the inquiry as a complicated maritime picture with limited resources. They thought a border force vessel was on its way to rescue them and advised those on the dinghy to stop calling. Neil Gibson took those calls, and his request not to appear on camera at the inquiry was granted.
If you don't understand what's fully going on and you're getting, we're all going to die, it's quite a distressing situation to find yourself in, of sitting at the end of a phone, effectively helpless. You know where they are. You want to get a boat to them. And you can't.
35,000 boat migrants, according to HM Coastguard, had been rescued in the months and years before that November night. But it was accused at the inquiry of burying its head in the corporate sand.
It's always been the family's belief that this could have been avoided. It was the death of their loved ones were preventable. I think what they have heard in the last 4 weeks, which has been striking and shocking for them to hear in terms, is this disconnect between the corporate message of the Coast Guard, which is we save all lives at sea, we respond to all distress calls in the same way as we must. But we have also heard how in the practical reality is that that doesn't happen with small boats.
The Coast Guard's response to the inquiry was to stress it is not the guarantor of the smugglers' dangerous, flawed and criminal business model. The inquiry would not have happened without pressure from these families. Their loss and their grief have not diminished. Low clouds that night led to no air surveillance. No lifeboat was ever launched. To them, what matters is that failures are acknowledged when the inquiry's report is finally published.